Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky coming on to talk to you today about May 2025. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a stream of consciousness about some of the intuitive insights I'm getting about this period of time, as well as putting up some astrology charts on the screen later in the video and talking about some of the transits that we're having. I'm really looking forward to filming this for you all today, as there is a very strong paradigm shift happening in May. We do have Saturn changing signs into Aries out of Pisces at the end of the month. And we have a lot of new era, new age situations entering into our experience, so I want to hold space for that today. If this video resonates for you, do hit the subscribe button below, turn on the bell notifications, and leave a comment and let me know what you're thinking about the month. So, as I was meditating today and just spending some time in reflection here at the end of Saturn in Pisces, I felt that May 2025 is more of a delicate and fragile energy than most people realize. It's only going to be a very small percentage of people who understand that we are working with quite delicate quantums. We are not able to really thrash about here, make a bunch of mistakes, miscalculate, mismeasure. We have had Neptune move into Aries. In the previous timeline, there have been a lot of changes, such as the death of the Pope, such as a lot of regime shift, and just a general feeling that a lot of the things that have been put into effect over the last 15 or 20 years are now perhaps unraveled and replaced, and there is definitely a different trajectory being implemented during this time. We have a really powerful influx of Aries energy that came in during April, and that's going to be repeated in May with Saturn applying toward Aries. But the tender point of this is that Saturn is not yet in Aries. It is moving through the anaretic degree of Pisces. We do have Neptune waiting for it and kind of compelling it towards Neptune. So I feel that Saturn is Saturn moving towards Neptune in May 2025 says to me that we have to move our material choices and enact material regimens that live up to some of our spiritual ideals and live up to some of our greater soul needs represented by Neptune. It's almost like Saturn is trying to get onto the same page as Neptune. Also, they're on this cusp of the 12th and the first sign, meaning that many stories have ended and we have a lot of new beginnings shaping up. So there is a difficulty here. There is the end of a story. There is a very wizened feeling and also a bond created through shared memories coming in May, and the question of how through these bonds of shared memories we meet minds together and plot a course forward with the Aries energy. So when this works really well. There can be a meeting of minds coming in May. There can be people who have been on different pages for a long time finally coming to a resolution or a compromise. There can also be a lot of hope and faith about a new frontier or about some type of change in regime or some kind of change in the way that things have been done for a long time, a shakeup of the status quo, and learning from past mistakes. This can all be a wonderful area of shared learning, shared inspiration, and this is the positive element of this time. Also, it's an interesting update for some people in their love life or their love language, as marriages can now get a more shared strategy forward. Business partnerships can get a more shared strategy forward. And also you can start to get to know someone better here as well. So if you've had a new partnership come into your life, or if you've kind of been at a roadblock with certain relationships, here during this time you can actually find an area of shared interest or shared inspiration that will bond you more or help you to actually see that someone that you didn't expect could actually have a lot more of a meaningful role in your life. So this is very positive. I have not felt this degree of positive potential in a long time with the general intuitive messages. So this is the nice thing about having this Aries energy coming in, about having these turnovers. But where it's difficult, okay, it can be very hard here to bring the material reality up to the ideal. Okay, so the way we think about things, the mind space versus the reality, it feels like the reality is lagging a little bit, right? Like Saturn kind of lagging behind Neptune. And it feels that it could be more expensive than we've anticipated to bring some of these things up to date. It feels that there's just a bit of space still between the ideal and the actual real scenario. It also feels that inside, many people would like to progress and advance their goals, relationships, and health, okay, but there could be something materially waiting. It's like maybe you have to get on a waiting list to get an appointment with that person that you know will help. Maybe even though a situationship has given you indications that they feel the same way, they may be hesitant to really catch up to you. Also, you may have totally cured your diet here, and it may take a bit of time for your body to acclimate and begin to shed some of the built up mass, okay? So May 2025 very much is about not freaking ourselves out about these lags and being patient, okay? It could be difficult to be patient here, and there could be a lot of time needed in quiet reflection. There could be an importance placed on giving yourself extra time to finish things and to sort of open up the mind to more collaborative ways forward. Okay, so if you're having like a budget issue with an update, maybe there's a way that, through other types of connections and relationships, you can advance this rather than spending, for example. Like maybe people are willing to help you. Maybe there are such things as like non-paid internships, or maybe there are also just people who are inspired by what you're doing and want to share in the creation of it. Okay, and I am sensing a more communal sense in business as well, and a bit of a less of a monetization. Also the possibility of a recession here, meaning that there's going to be less financial overhead that people are working with, meaning that yes, all of this financial mania that people have been in for these last few years may not be the connecting component to advancing from here. So we may need to find alternatives to advancement that are not based in finance. We have a very interesting Taurus season here, as we have this late Uranus in Taurus, and we also have a very, very nice new moon in Taurus on the 27th of April that is going to show us a better way to work with our financial positions. And unfortunately for some of us, it's going to just mean demonetizing some things, or it's going to mean working together with people in a more communal sense, perhaps, and with shared inspirations rather than, creating a staff and having a payroll and just expecting people to do things for money. Now, I'm not saying that we're getting out of that energy of, paid labor or paid collaboration. But I'm feeling that for a lot of people, especially people who are not at like this huge high-level institutional context, there is going to be a feeling of passion projects versus monetized projects. There is going to also be a feeling of the family working together, or the soul, the inherited family or soul family working together to get things done. Also, interestingly, I'm seeing quite a growth in polygamy, okay? And I'm seeing a growth in like tribal mentalities as well. So like villages working together, tribes working together, and even relationships with multiple amounts of people working together to get results. Also something like 6 to 8 roommates renting apartments in order to pay for this, okay, rather than one person taking the burden alone or one couple taking the burden alone. I'm seeing shared housing. I'm seeing shared village spaces. I'm seeing churches. I'm seeing any areas where people come together, quote unquote, for free, okay? So ancestral lands, church communities, village spaces, village kitchens, okay? This could also be homeless shelters and food for those who are impoverished. Okay, so I'm seeing areas that people come together in mass, and they're not paying for these things. So yes, this could also be a reduction of like a food stamps kind of thing. This could mean that people can't afford things, and this could mean that people have to rely on a more communal type of root system in order to resolve some of this patchwork. Again, rather than reaching for the credit card, rather than thinking, how can I earn more money to do this? Rather than thinking, what can I sell so that I can, buy something else? Okay, we're getting a little bit out of these exchange metrics, and we're moving, I feel, more into some degree of an ancient human root system. And I also feel there will be quite a lot of antagonism, or that these systems could be antagonized, or they could also feel a little bit outworn. So like imagine moving into like your grandparents' house or something, and maybe these carpets are ancient, or maybe, this porch is like barely standing, but it works. And it's like maybe free, okay? So there is going to be a lot of things like this at a material, psychological, and energetic level, like relying on older structures. And maybe a question is how to like creatively improve these structures or creatively update these systems. And a very important need placed on communication. This is also, I think, Jupiter applying towards Cancer. Of course, we do have Jupiter in Gemini for all of May, which I feel now, having had that for about a year, people are really feeling the pain of that debilitated Jupiter. I've spoken with a lot of people in my life who have like lost a lot of friends, a lot of frivolous relationships have just kind of dissolved off, and there's been a huge turnover with relationships of all kinds, friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships. And a lot of people are going to be left in a state of isolation coming through this time because they need to rebuild things from the ground up at a relationship level when Jupiter in Cancer comes. So don't freak out if you're feeling solitude, okay? It may mean that these other people were not good enough. It may mean that these other people could never support you unless you could like pay for them, or unless you could give them something of an exchange, right? Again, we're in such a capitalistic, exchange-based, currency-based culture that it's almost hard for most humans participating in this modern society to decapitalize or de-exchange their relationships. So, this is where people date around and they're like, this person gives me more of a dopamine hit than that person, I'm going to move towards them. But oh my gosh, here's this new person that really gives me a dopamine hit. So I'm forgetting that this person that I liked existed and I'm moving over to this. And you see this turnover, right? And a lot of sadness and turmoil for the people who just get like left on red, or, were built up to believe that there could be something and then for things to just disappear. So there's a lot of rage. There's a lot of inchoate rage from this cusp Neptune that we have right now. And a difficulty in applying that right with Pluto and Aquarius, because a lot of people want to detach, right? They want to pull away. They want to withdraw. So like, what do they do with this inchoate rage? And there's definitely a pipeline there for like chronic illness, for kind of losing track of the material form, the body. Okay, so I definitely recommend in May 2025 creating approaches, okay, to any health problem, like very concise, very metered approaches to resolving this, and not keeping up in your mind like appointments, okay, things that that are good for you. And for some people, a fast, okay, with Saturn at the anaretic degree of Pisces moving up towards Neptune. Some people for the month of May will need to implement some type of fasting. Okay, it does not have to be extreme, but I do feel for some people that there could be an overabundance of dopamine. There could be an overabundance of pleasure chemicals. And Taurus season can also naturally bring that about. And I do feel that we need a sobriety. Okay, I do feel that we need to pray for a sober understanding of what's going on in our lives. I feel that we need to pray for a recharging. I feel that we need to pray for better sleep. I feel that we need to pray for community teamwork, and for coalitions and collaborations that transcend the monetary system. Otherwise, we are on a path to destruction. So we have got to really get this right. And I think that fasting is where it's going to be for a lot of people. So if you've needed that, if you've kind of been like letting that swell up inside you for a while, now is the time in May before Saturn gets into Aries, because we're going to need energy for that. We're going to need calories for that. We're going to need, in some cases, some kind of stimulating effect to hammer those nails, essentially, when Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. So now is the time for rest, sabbaticals, fasting, anything like that, because we need a vision, okay? Saturn in Pisces, in some way, should have brought some kind of transcendental vision, okay? Some kind of moral to the last 30-year story, some kind of idea for a compromise or resolution. If we still feel that that is lacking a little bit, what we need to do is we need to really get some of the distractions, ADD, doom scrolling, dopaminergic activities out, because I feel that that could be flooding us with rewards when it's not merited, meaning like why even find a resolution to any of this stuff? If you just have this abundance of reward chemicals all day, every day, there's no need to even do anything in your life. So yeah, for some people with this Taurus season, I really feel that it's time to plant a new garden. Okay, I feel it's time to get some of these crops out, some of these weeds out, and to so here we get a little bit of a contradiction going on, because as I've said, with late Uranus and Taurus, I've talked a lot about this on my Patreon page in the Sign by Signs. If you want to go and check that out, I'll link that below. But I've talked about how this is very much a reaping phase. This is not so much a sowing phase, but already now I do feel that in some cases things have been reaped, and we do for like the rest of this year, I believe, have that tendency or that natural reaping energy here. But I see for some people, they're growing in their gardens things that are not really that nutritionally sound, and they might be reaping something that's a little bit questionable in quality. You know, this could also be a tangible message about the soil quality and agricultural practices. Maybe there's a produce issue. I mean, we already know that there is, but maybe that is going to become something that has to be addressed in a sustainable way during this time. Although I wouldn't expect that to be mainstream, but there may just be discoveries by like the owners of farms or by scientists that the soil cannot go on like this, or that there's so little nutrition in a lot of these like industrial farming projects. You know, I've seen in about the last 3 or 4 Taurus seasons, ever since about 2020 and 2021, that there were like agricultural emergencies, but this is not something that's covered in the news, okay? But I had that at a psychic level, that there were like severe agricultural emergencies happening, and that like what's on the shelves at the supermarkets, for example, is like a question mark, okay? I don't know. But keep that in mind here. Keep that in mind. And I don't really have an answer for this because it's so dependent on where you live and, you know, what region you're in, and it's different for everybody, but there's definitely something coalescing about one's own food growth, okay, growing one's own food, planting one's own garden, and mitigating this at least. You know, this is a hard time to like overhaul things very much, but like you can mitigate though. You can get supplemental income, but sometimes you can't necessarily totally retire yet, or you can supplement your food supply, but you can't necessarily live off of your own garden completely yet. There's a lot of this hybrid experience here, and that's totally fine right now. Better to mitigate something than to not have any relief at all. So also I feel that mitigation can be increased until maybe around 2030, a lot of people can totally like be self-sufficient. So that also kind of reinforces the reaping phase that a lot of people are in here. They're like reaping something so that later they can be self-sufficient, funding their retirement so that they can retire later. Okay, so that's totally fine here as well. Now, another thing that has been coming up in the Sign by Signs, again, check out the Patreon link below. I have wonderful deals for you all to get every sign for May 2025. Long, wonderful readings. Panics, okay? There's going to be a panicked energy in May. the final decan of Jupiter in Gemini is going to cause a very exaggerated kind of communication. I do expect some market crashes. I do expect investor panic. Not even so much necessarily that the actual implementations in the economy are causing a crash. I mean, they could in the future, but it's really more so like an investor panic. And then also this is going to happen in other territories as well, like just panicked people in your life, overstimulated people, people making mountains out of molehills, and constantly being in a state of like anxiety and panic and almost feeding off of that. Almost like, ooh, I'm so scared to have like a relaxed day, or I'm so scared for things to be okay, or I am so worried about having peaceful relationships in my life. I got to fight with people. I got to have anger. I've got to panic about something. I've got to, experience some kind of preconceived doom about the world. And this is going to get really gaseous in May. And then Jupiter in Cancer, I feel, is going to humble this. So in the future, a lot of the people who have panicked and been like overwired during Jupiter in Gemini are going to lose a lot of money, possibly, okay? They're going to not have time anymore to frivolously participate in these unnecessary panics. It's kind of like Brooklyn Bridge on fire or whatever, or the crowded theater, you know what I mean? Like creating panics out of nothing. And there are going to be some really severe repercussions for this, like, fire starting, okay? And actually kind of like the energy of arson in a spiritual context. So I recommend that we sober down now. I recommend that we become a little bit more judicious about what warrants an emergency response and what doesn't. And I recommend that we be very careful with buying and selling, very careful with things like stock investments, very careful with the volume of turnover, okay? Buying and selling things quickly, putting things on the market, buying other things, it's creating chaos. And do you kind of feel this energy? It's kind of like a dizzying energy. It's kind of like an energy that I feel will not be spoken positively of in the history books, okay? And it will be referred to as just really harsh. And in the future, there could be certain limitations put on certain speculative actions and frivolous buying and selling because of this time. And I also feel that this is a very exalted period of time for people who live alone. This is a very exalted period of time for people to create their own private spaces. But I will say that, again, there's a need for sobering and there's a need for clarity as new paths open up when Saturn goes into Aries on the 24th of May. So let's go ahead and segue into the astrology charts. Okay, so I will make a video about Saturn in Aries, and also it will be retrograding at the end of the year back into Pisces, so it's not quite out of the woods yet, but we get a little bit of a taste of it now. Also, we are starting out the month of May with Venus conjunct Neptune in Aries, and we just had Venus conjunct Saturn in April in Pisces. So Venus is kind of bridging the gap as well as the North Node, right, between Saturn and Neptune, meaning that we may need to integrate a lot more love into these questions of the material and the spiritual coming together. Some people might be lacking love in some of their projects, or there might be too much of a business orientation or too much of a task orientation going on. And I feel that some people, just by moving into a softer approach, may do better. And on the second, yes, this Venus conjunct Neptune in Aries is going to, I think, give us a little bit more vision about these new frontiers that are opening up. It's going to also maybe open some doors, kind of like the Nine of Cups in the tarot. There's kind of like maybe something that was previously closed about moving forward or moving ahead could be opened up through this Venus energy. So there is a feeling of starting off May with an opening, or with something that was previously blocked or some previous mental block opening up. Also on the 11th of May, we have Mercury moving into Taurus. So that's going to help us to get a better budget, perhaps, or it's going to help us to make a more solid approach to our forward motions. Yes, there is also a full moon in Scorpio on May 12th, and on the 18th of May, we have a Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So that's going to also really clear up some of this stuff about like what we're reaping out of certain situations. All of this that I was talking about what we were growing in the gardens, or what our garden of life essentially was yielding, will get very cleared up during that time. And of course, then, yes, May 21st, Sun in Gemini, Venus trine Mars, May 24th, Saturn in Aries. Okay, so there's all of a sudden going to be maybe a bit of a panic, I feel, during that time. And I also feel that some people are not quite prepared to step onto these new paths. There could be kind of like an extension for some people needed, and then maybe also some anxiety coming in for people who do feel like they're lagging. So May is a great time to start moving ahead on projects, to start getting momentum, because we may start to feel like we're getting behind. We may start to feel like we can't continue sort of stagnating or continue on in the mind while the physical is not considered. Finally, we're ending the month with the new moon in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, and that's going to help us free up our mind and focus more on communication rather than slowing things down. So there's definitely another level of speeding up by the end of May, especially as we enter Gemini season. And I do feel that a lot of the messages that have been coming up this year about having more of a quicksilver approach or more of a light-footed approach will really start to materialize by the end of this month. And yes, everyone, do come and check out each individual sign. I've made video installments for each sign, audio installments. Okay, all 12 signs have their own stream over on Patreon that is in the center of your screen now. And do hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below and let me know how you enjoyed the video or what you think about May. Have a wonderful month, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.